You gotta be smart when you're reaching out to people. You gotta be able to build a relationship beyond a transaction.
The only limits to your success are your own imagination.
When you're filling a gap that is so needed, then you find the commerce of that business starts to make absolute sense.
Want to be happy? Build a life, not just a business. Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and this channel was created to help you overcome the #1 challenge that is holding you back, a lack of belief in yourself. You watch these videos because you know there's something more inside you too. You've got Michael Jordan level genius at something. So today, let's live your best belief life and learn from some of the best Black female entrepreneurs on the planet. Enjoy. Okay, let's kick it off with rule #1. Have relentless determination with Oprah Winfrey.
My television career began unexpectedly. As you heard this morning, I was in the Miss Fire Prevention contest. That was when I was 16 years old in Nashville, Tennessee, and you had the requirement of having to have red hair in order to win up until the year that I entered. So they were doing the question and answer period because I knew I wasn't going to win in the swimsuit competition. So during the question and answer period, the question came, "Why, young lady, what would you like to be when you grow up?" And by the time they got to me, all the good answers were gone. So I had seen Barbara Walters on the Today Show that morning, so I answered, "I would like to be a journalist. I would like to tell other people's stories in a way that makes a difference in their lives and the world." And as those words were coming out of my mouth, I went, "Whoa, this is pretty good. I would like to be a journalist. I want to make a difference." Well, I was on television by the time I was 19 years old. And in 1986, I launched my own television show with a relentless determination to succeed. At first, I was nervous about the competition, and then I became my own competition, raising the bar every year, pushing myself as hard as I knew. Sound familiar to anybody here? Eventually, we did make it to the top, and we stayed there for 25 years. The Oprah Winfrey Show was #1 in our time slot for 21 years. And I have to tell you, I became pretty comfortable with that level of success.
Rule #2, find a champion with Michelle Thornton G.
You gotta find an advocate or a champion. Matter of fact, don't leave this room until you have one. I didn't say mentor. Great, you can have a mentor. That's typical. That's great. That's amazing. It takes a long time to build a relationship. But sometimes all you need is someone to send an email on your behalf. We make it complicated, right? Because if I email on your behalf, you're going to get a meeting. And it took me 3 minutes. Now, this is the rule. When I leave here today, please don't let me see in my LinkedIn account everybody's resumes and business cards and pictures. And you know, my auntie, send me something that I can use. Be memorable. Do some research on me. This is not a game. This is easy. You gotta be smart when you're reaching out to people. You gotta be able to build a relationship beyond a transaction, because transaction means we're done after we say hello. I'm giving you guys some tricks that I have used to build relationships with people that are still meaningful today. I can absolutely tell you that I'm an EVP in the world's largest talent agency where you don't see many people like me. I can look, okay, I'm kind of cute for 53, but you don't still see a lot of people like me. But my girl, Bozoma St. John, made a call for me and said we should hire her, and that's what went down. But because we had a relationship, because we shared information, because I'm sending her stuff that she needs, because I see she's traveling, so I sent her a care kit on the road. Okay, I know she has a lot of hair. I sent her a bonnet. Whatever it is, be smart. Use your thing. Get out of your phone just to follow other people that don't care about you. Use the tool to get ahead. There's a lot of competition out there.
Rule #3, be creative with Rihanna.
It's really important for me to expand, to build, to evolve, to do things bigger, better, try new aspects of creativity. Very important for me. I get bored really quickly, so if I've done it, I'm already bored of it while I'm doing it. that's something, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I'm always like, what's next? What's next? I want something better. I want something different. How do we, it doesn't necessarily have to be bigger, but maybe it's deeper. Maybe we just go deeper and explore things that aren't being discussed.
Rule number 4, solve a problem with Iman.
It was in 1975. It was my first photo shoot, and it was for American Vogue. And I have never worn heels. I've never worn makeup before I arrived in the United States. I was, studying political science. I've never seen fashion magazines. I had no idea that there was anything called fashion that existed, in the world. So at that photo shoot, I walked in, and there was another model on the shoot, and she was Caucasian. And the makeup artist asked me, and I was then 19 years old. He asked me specifically, did you bring your own foundation? But it wasn't lost on me that he didn't ask that question to the Caucasian girl. Mm-hmm. So I thought something, because I had no idea what he was talking about. I didn't even know what foundation was. So then he proceeded to mix and match some products and put it on my face. And I looked in the mirror and I looked gray. I looked horribly gray, my skin. And so what saved my career, because that was my first shoot, what saved my career was that the photographs were actually black and white. And those black and whites hide multitude of sins. Interesting. But what I did was that I made it my job to find something that was suitable for my skin. So I went to all the department stores. I went to Woolworth. You're too young to remember Woolworth.
No, of course. I rocked it at Woolworths too. I came out of the womb 10 with a martini in 1975. So I was new to the planet.
I love you for that. I love you for that.
I did.
And I mixed products and put it on my face. And I took a Polaroid camera and I took pictures so I could see how will it translate. That was the seed that was implanted in my head, that I have to take control of my own image. We were talking about language, but in fashion and beauty, our power is how we look. Our currency is how our images look. Yeah. So I wanted to make sure that I took control of that and that I could put myself at the best forward life without, and I never went to a fashion shoot without a foundation from then on.
And
then when I retired in 1989 and I created in 1994 Iman Cosmetics for women with skin of color. Yeah. And I say skin of color because before I started my makeup, everybody, black, especially black, were called just women of color. Yeah. And even now, when you think about women of color, you only think about black women. But I wanted a new language of beauty, of how to include everybody in. That is because there are Filipinos who are as dark as I am. There are Puerto Ricans who are, the same color. Brazilians who are so the whole world. I was not interested in the ethnicity. I was interested in the spectrum of colors that the whole world comes in.
Rule number 5, imagine with Shonda Rhimes.
My father has always said to me, the only limits to your success are your own imagination. And growing up, I was chubby in all the wrong places with Coke bottle thick glasses and 2 cornrow braids down the sides of my head. And I was the youngest of 6 kids. But I had all of these dreams and ideas of what I would be. I had a lot of dreams and a lot of ideas. I had fancies. I had doodles in the brain. I had and still have an extraordinary imagination. There were worlds inside there, nations and lands, Shondalands. The only limit to my success was my own imagination. My father saying that was a gift because I really believed growing up I could be whatever I imagined. And it's only now as a parent do I look back to see how hard my parents must have worked to make that belief possible for me in the 1970s. The Civil Rights Act wasn't even a decade old when I was born. I mean, my mom was like some sort of superhero gladiator advance team for my life, single-handedly removing the soul-crushing boulders of sexism and racism from my path, paving the way so that by the time I skipped happily along with my big ideas and piles of writing, the road was smooth and easy. They tell stories of my mother in my hometown. She is legend, but I was blissfully unaware. The only limit to your success is your own imagination, but still, you have to be able to imagine it. One day I turned on the TV and saw something it had never occurred to me to imagine. I saw this woman on TV and she was smart and funny and emotionally honest and she seemed unapologetically herself. She was in charge, comfortable, powerful, smart, real. It was her show and she looked like me. She was a black woman on television And then she was a Black woman taking over the world through television. She was Oprah. Oprah Winfrey changed my imagination. She changed what I found to be imaginable. Any limits to my success suddenly seemed, something clicked, and my imagination had no limits. The world got wider. And it wasn't overnight, and it wasn't just Oprah, but Oprah was my first and most powerful example on TV of someone who looked like me. There was also Claire Huxtable in prime time and Whoopi Goldberg live on Broadway. But I want you to hear me when I say this, because I'm betting some of you have an image in your mind of what a Black childhood looked like, so this feels typical to you. But I was a middle-class kid from the suburbs with a private school education and nerdy intellectuals for parents. I grew up sheltered from the ugliness of any realities having to do with poverty and real racism. I played the oboe, I was a brownie, and I'd still never seen anyone on TV who looked like me on the outside and looked like me on the inside. It had never occurred to me that television could be where my imagination would be most at home. If you can't even imagine something, how can you reach for it? You cannot see what you cannot be. And it wasn't that I wanted to be Oprah, but it was that I now knew there was a door somewhere inside that television screen, and that it was absolutely possible to either knock on it or kick it down to get inside. I knew that that world, this world, could include me.
Also, if you want to have more self-confidence and self-belief, the science says it can take up to 254 days of consecutive action for the habit to stick. That's what I want for you. So I've designed a custom, free program where I'm going to send you an unlisted video for the next 254 days to shift your confidence and belief forward. The link to join is in the description below.
Figure out where your power base is.
So it's not selfish to put yourself first.
No, it's self-full.
It's self-full.
It's self-full to be first, to be as good as possible to you, to take care of you.
So many times I get the question, how do I prevent failure? And I'd love for you to spend that same energy going, how could I ensure that I soar?
Rule number 6, be aware of your money blueprint with Lisa Nichols.
I have this program where I look at your money blueprint and I help you look at your money blueprint. And I ask you questions. How was money in your household? Was it the source of argument, the source of contention and divisiveness? Because if so, you don't want money to divide you and your family. So you might not want to have money around, or you want too much because you don't want to be divided.
You don't want to be judged,
right,
or whatever.
Or did it keep your parents away? Mm-hmm. Like, what was your relationship to money as a child? Because that's fueling you. That has an unconscious influence over you now.
A filter of how you see everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you want to bring from the unconscious to the conscious. You might not be listening to it, but you definitely don't want it to have any unconscious power over you. So that's number 1. Be aware of your money blueprint. How is money related to in your community? How is it related to in your house? What did you think about money? How is your faith attached to it? I used to think that literally in order to be like Sister Brown, who was like the most godly woman in my church when I was a teenager, she was amazing. But we also had fundraisers for Sister Brown. That I could not have $1 million in my bank account and be Sister Brown.
Yeah.
So I had to it took me years to do that.
Rule number 7, nurture your vision with Iyanla Vanzant.
The spiritual code of conduct says, don't move till you have a vision. That's why we fail sometimes. You see, a vision means that you can see it on the inside before you can experience it on the outside. Now, you can have all the plans you want, but if you can't see it, nothing's going to happen. You got to have a vision, and that comes from you taking time to sit down and do your daily spiritual practice. Okay? Vision ain't going to fall to you out the top of the closet. You got to do the work. You got to sit down, shut up, listen. You got to tune in to your own channel, not just YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Snap, the pot or the chat or whoever the hell the thing is. People be chat-snatting. I mean, chat-snatting. Do you Snapchat? Okay? And never reflecting. Never correcting so that they can be directed. correct, reflect in order to be directed.
Rule number 8, be different with Tabitha Karanja.
Who are you targeting at the time with the wine you were making?
We were targeting the lower market because we felt they are the ones who were neglected then. They didn't have a drink that they could put on the table and drink. They were left to drink whatever was available in their villages.
Right.
And we thought it was unhygienic. Why don't you come up with a product that is produced hygienically and then affordable and that meets international standard? And then when we were doing that, we also discovered even the middle and the upper market didn't also have choices.
Right.
And also we thought, why don't you come up again with a choice? And that's how we thought of coming up with the Summit Lager. The Summit Lager, again, we had to try and come up also with a more superior product than what was in the market. Because you have to be different. When you come in, don't just come and copy your competitor who has been there for many years.
Yeah.
For people to turn eyes on you, you have to make sure that you're different. So we came up with a more superior beer. People didn't know that you can have a beer and go and wake up in the morning with no hangover. People didn't know that they can have a beer and have no aftertaste.
Yeah.
And they can also have a beer that is also healthy with no additives, no sugar added and all that. And after we launched the Summit Lager, you can see it only took us very short time to notice that whatever we had launched was not enough. And that's why now we did this expansion that you can see here, which we launched this year.
Rule number 9, don't accept no with Foloronso Alakija.
And I went to see the petroleum minister, and what they wanted was to lift crude. And the petroleum minister said, listen, the current administration at that time really wanted to move away from that, preferred to get Nigerians to be more involved in that rather than, giving that out to foreigners. So he said, if they want to invest in Nigeria rather than come and lift Nigeria's crude, then they'd be willing to do that. I took it back to my friend. She took it back to her clients, and her clients said, no, we don't want to invest in Nigeria. We only wanted to lift. So we parted ways, said bye-bye. And I said to myself, now that I have an inroad to that place, why don't I go and find something I can do? All I wanted was a contract. You understand what I'm saying? To boost, my pocket. I still wanted to carry on doing my fashion. I love it.
Yeah.
So I went back. I asked Mrs. Babangida to please help me to book another appointment. And I went to see the minister, and I told him that I was interested in, finding something to do with the
oil industry,
with with NNPC. And I was given all sorts of different options, that are possibilities. You understand me? Catering for those on the offshore.
Yes.
And maybe transporting crude from one location to another, stuff like that. So I would sit down, write my letter, and take it there. Sometimes I had to wait 6 months to get the appointment. Yes.
Wow.
Sometimes 4 months. And I would go back, and he would punch holes in what I had come to offer. And I would go back dejected. And I would go and do some more homework. And then I'd get Mrs. Babangida to book another appointment for me.
Wow.
So that went on. They were all no-nos, which is one of the reasons why I've made it one of my mantras. Never accept a no for an answer. So I came back home and I cried my eyes out. My husband comforted me. And I called Mrs. Babangida and I said, this is what I came back with. And she said, well, all she knows is that kind of thing takes years. And we left it at that. And I carried on licking my wounds. And then I woke up one day and I said, no, I'm not accepting that no. I'm not going to allow that to just fritter away.
Yes.
It was like a wake-up call. Furniture, what's the matter with you? I thought you liked challenges. I was saying that to myself. Come on, do something about this. What's there to lose?
Yeah.
So I decided that I was going to go back. So I called Mrs. Babangida and I said, please, I'd like to ask you to please book me one more appointment. And she did.
She was very kind.
She was very kind.
Wow, okay.
But that was all that she did concerning this oil license matter. She kept on getting me those appointments. And the rest was what God wanted to do. What he wanted to do at first by giving me that opening through my friend, because I would have never looked at the oil industry.
Correct.
So I went back and I said to the minister that I wanted to see whether I could do this, that I really want to apply for it. So he said, okay, you go and do your homework, because it's Nigerians that the government of the day wants to encourage now.
Yeah.
We have a lot of multinationals over the years. We want to encourage Nigerians. We want our resources and our wealth to be retained in our own land, rather than having it carted away by foreigners all the time.
Yes.
So I applied for the license 3 times. And that took 3 years.
3 years.
The ministers changed hands twice. And it was during the time of the last one that I eventually got it. I think I was one of the first women to get the license. And it's very painful when you listen to what people say. That, oh, it's because she made blouses for Mrs. Babangida. Oh, it's because she was one of them. But how about all the others who got the license and who weren't in the oil industry at the time that they got the license? So because they're men, they have 2 heads. Is it fair on womanhood? Why relegate us to the background? Why say we can't when we can? When all the prerequisites, the boxes could be ticked. I made all of them available at technical partners, and I went here and there. I did everything. I supplied everything. I did my homework. I learned on the job. I went for courses as well to help me, to build me up. You understand? To be able to sit in boardrooms and face others.
Rule number 10, give a personal touch with Sheila Johnson.
I think from the very beginning, when I had the vision to build the Salamander Resort, I really based it on how I live from day to day and where I live. I have an extraordinary house that I completely renovated and designed myself. And the design of the resort is very similar to my personal home. And when I have people come to this resort, I want them to feel a part of my world. I want them to be able to step through those front doors and feel like I've come home again. I want them to experience something that is so different. And when they walk around that resort, they're going to see my personal touches, from my photographs to some linens that I've designed, items in the gift shop that I personally have designed. They're going to feel my presence whether I'm there or not. It is my thumbprint that I am trying to give as a gift to the world.
Rule number 11, keep eye contact with Janice Bryant Howard.
It's so difficult to curate 3 big learnings from such a short period of employment, because that employment period was truly transformational in my life. I'll share with you what comes to mind first, okay? I remember distinctly Tommy teaching me Always stand up when someone enters, but always make sure that you're at the same eye level with them during a conversation. When he first taught me that, my mom had taught me to stand when entering or when someone enters your presence. But what Tommy did was he dynamically would ensure that he was always eye level with whoever he was speaking, whether he was across the desk in a passing or in a meeting. And I thought when he first told me that, it was about his male ego, you know, who's in charge. Just yesterday, I was playing for one of my business brand groups, A-Check, a video and it's called The Nurse with the Purple Hair. And one of the things she says as she conducts her work in hospices is that she always keeps eye level with the patient. And so if she's changing an IV or administering insulin through one, she always will make sure she and that patient are eye level, even if it means kneeling on the floor to do so. And she said she does that because it brings a level of confidence, comfort, and engagement that we're in this together. So whether it's from Tommy's position of never letting anyone stand above you or her position of never placing yourself above someone else, I really have learned that lesson that keeping eye level contact is important to people, and it's dramatically important if you're speaking from across cultures or languages.
And rule number 12, the last one before some very special bonus clips, is tell your story with Mo Abudu.
My first question is about your life as a businesswoman and your company, Ebony Life TV. So it's been extraordinarily successful. It's been the highest ranked talk show for 9 years in Africa. It's aired in no fewer than 49 countries in Africa. I'm wondering, what are the challenges that face your company, and indeed other networks, that need to compete in a world in which the opinions of our generation are increasingly being formed online and on social media rather than on television?
Thank you. It's great to be here, by the way. Thank you all so much for inviting me to share this afternoon with you. For me, I believe that deep down in my subconsciousness has always been the need to tell the African story. So it's a commercial venture, but it's also a social venture for me. So for me, I don't see the divide between work and play. So my staff get emails from me at 3 o'clock in the morning and think I'm absolutely crazy. But you know, so the journey started for me officially, I would say, about 10 years ago. But I would say that it's been a much, much longer journey than that. Now, I was born in England. I was born at a place called Hammersmith Hospital. Went back to Nigeria at age 7, came back to the UK at age 11. But between age 0 and 7 and 11 to whenever it was that I spent the rest of my life here before I went back as a married woman, you find that you do get asked really interesting questions by non-Africans. You know, they will ask you if you live in a hut. They will ask you if you live under a bridge. They will ask you if you speak African, but there is no such language as African. Africa is a continent with millions of different languages. And I found that my children, years and years later, came back to the United Kingdom, you know, to school. My son went to Harrow, my daughter went to Malvern, and they were being asked similar questions 20 or 30 years later. And therefore, I felt it was time. I was really afraid, because I was working in ExxonMobil as head of human resources, to say that it was time to take the plunge and put aside administrative work and really start to tell this journey, you know, start this journey of telling the African story. I have no media experience up until that point. I'd never been trained in media. So the first thing I did was to obviously go on a training course and learn how to speak hello and good morning or good afternoon and welcome to Moments with Mo and whatever it is that one has to say. So for me, the journey started pretty much from those sort of baby steps to getting out there and sharing the story. So yes, it did become a commercial venture, because I think sometimes when you're filling a gap that is so needed, then you find the commerce of that business starts to make absolute sense to what it is that you're doing. I was able to go out and speak to advertisers and speak to sponsors and convince them that there was a need for us to start sharing our stories, successful stories, sometimes stories that were not necessarily about some of the great things happening, but women, it could be an issue of domestic violence, of a woman that's overcome the violence. It could be fashion, it could be music. It could be great things also. So the reason for our being was really to start showcasing some of the great things that were happening across the continent and to shed light and balance on some of those other issues that was getting absolutely no airtime at all. So in that regard, it started to make commercial sense to me as an entrepreneur, and we're able to take advantage of that and build upon that success year after year. Moments with Mo has probably recorded over 2 or 3, over 800, episodes in that time period.
Now I've got a really special bonus clip that I think you're going to enjoy. But before that, it's time for the question of the day. I want to know, what was your single biggest takeaway from this video and your plan of action for the next week? The science says that when you just watch a video, you get motivated, you get inspired, you have a 35% chance of following through on your goals. 35%! That's not enough! That's not enough just to get motivated. Believe Nation, we're here, you're here. Today matters. You're an action taker. When you commit to a plan of action of when and how you're going to follow through, when you write it down, you have a 91% chance of following through. And when you commit publicly to somebody else, it jumps to 95% chance. From 30-something% to 95% chance of you following through. Believe Nation, we need to make this happen. So question of the day, your single biggest takeaway from this video and your plan of action specific for the next week. Put it down in the comments below, and I'm going to show on screen sometime next week to celebrate.
My name is Nsigibiela. I'm the winemaker and owner of Aslina Wines. Originally from KwaZulu-Natal, from the village, which is the most beautiful space you can ever be in. Because if you compare the village and the cities, the peacefulness you get in the village is just amazing. And that's where I come from. Getting into the industry, it was one of those things that it wasn't a plan. I got into it by chance. It was an opportunity that actually presented itself. And not that I didn't even know anything about wine, but it was like, there's an opportunity. And I was like, oh, well, it's going to change my life. And I did it. Through all the struggles, obviously, that I found in the industry, and also that difference in terms of culture, in terms of the place, in terms of people, it helped me to grow, and I managed to navigate the space. I started Aslina Wines in 2016. Officially launched in 2017, but the very first production was in 2014. I was working for a winery for about 13 years, working as a winemaker. Me starting Aslina, it was just growth, progression, to say what's the next step. Even though I knew from the beginning while I was a student that at some point I'm going to start my own business. And the reason the company was named Aslina, it was because of my most amazing, strong woman, my grandmother. I named the company after her, to honor her, to pay tribute to her life. Even though she's late, but I know she's always with me. When sometimes I hit a wall or I find myself I need to make a decision, sometimes I do ask myself, what would she have done? She was one of those people who nothing was impossible. There was always a way. There was always a way of making something. For me, I think that's the message it also gives to everyone who want to do something. Nothing is impossible. Nothing is impossible. We've got 4 different wines that we've made. We've got 2 white wines and 2 red wines. And at this moment, we don't have our own farm. We don't have our own vineyards. We don't have our own production facility. But we are growing to that. And each and every wine that I make, it represents the people behind it. It represents the love. It represents authenticity. It represents courage. And at the same time, it's one of that, for me, that when you pour this wine in a glass, where does it take you to? What do you imagine when you're having that wine in the glass? Don't tell me about the pH. Don't tell me about just where does it take you? It must create that memory. It must remind you of your life. It must remind you of certain things that you grew up with. That's what happened whenever I make a wine. I bottled this yesterday, and this is the very first time I'm opening this. This is where I always say this is the moment of truth. So when I was going to make the Chardonnay, I was like, so what is it that I want to make? I said I want the one in the middle. I decided to make a Chardonnay that is partly wooded, from a warmer climate region and also from the cold climate. So I make Chardonnay from Stellenbosch and Elgin. I make them separately. The Elgin one is wooded, the Stellenbosch is unwooded. I leave them on the lees, and then I blend it together after 10 months. And so what comes out of that It's the life in the glass. Oh, the smell, even like just in the glass without even getting it in my mouth. I think what I like here, as I smell this wine, to pick up those different flavors, a lot of citrus. It's like there's a little bit of lime. It's just, for me, you are not going to taste lime if you've never eaten lime. So I might pick up something here, and you're going to smell it and you associate it with something else. So you're going to pick up something that you know. It's going to remind you of things that you know and things that you enjoy. It gets on your palate. It stays. It's not heavy. There's a crispiness, but at the same time, it's rich. That balance, for me, it's because there's so much going on the palate. There is just so much. The richness of the wine, for me, it's outstanding. The next wine that we have is a Cabernet Sauvignon. Again, looking at the labels of my wine, for me, it was the key to make sure that I connect with my background. I connect with where I come from. And so I made sure that the logo, besides naming my company after my grandmother, but also the logo represents that. And that is using a calabash, which is our traditional beer holder. Now I'm linking the two part of my life, which is I'm in the wine industry, but I still love drinking my traditional beer. So I'm going to use the calabash. When we started selling our wines, we started with the international market. As a small company, we didn't have the infrastructure to make sure that the wine gets to the consumer, to make sure that the wine gets to the hands of the people who are going to be drinking it. While with the international market, it's more like you ship the wine, and then it's the importer on the other side who actually does the whole distribution. I don't have to worry about the end consumer. There's that bit of earthiness. It's like, when you're walking outside, it's hot, and then just a little bit of drizzle of rain, and then you're like, oh, okay, and then that smell, it excites me. But at the same time, when you still go in, you pick up those different fruits, the black currants, you pick up a little bit of darker fruits. And one of the reasons, because my Cabernet, part of it is from the Helderberg and part of it is from Simonsberg. So these two areas, they bring this complexity into the glass. As we taste this wine, I think, as I said earlier, soft tannins, fruit up front, and for me, that's the key. And one of the things that I brought this Chardonnay and this Cabernet Sauvignon, the Cab is not a heavy Cabernet Sauvignon. So it means you can have it slightly chilled and have it summertime. But it's a beautiful bold wine, but it's not heavy. It's got structure, it's rich. So that's what you like.
If you want another awesome video in our Black Excellence series, check out the video right there next to me. I think you'll enjoy it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.